Desperate times. Devin Maloney had exactly 3 objectives in mind for her summer: make more money, find a rich boyfriend, and move out of her parents' house, preferably directly into future rich boyfriend's abode. All of this would help to convince Devin that she was in fact not such a fuck up after all. So what if she was 26 and hadn't made something of herself? It wasn't just her multiple jobs and her empty bank account anymore. It was the sheer number of weddings she had witnessed on her Instagram that was making her physically ill at the moment. Each time she opened up her phone, she held it slightly away from her. She couldn't bear to look at the screen for longer than a few moments as she rapidly swiped through the most current weddings, searching for people she knew, hoping that she wouldn't see him. Him being Christian Parker, the situationship that seemed to never amount to anything. Christian ebbed and flowed through Devon's life, that most of her major milestones were synonymous with him in one way or another. She couldn't think about him now. It was too easy to fall down the rabbit hole and convince herself that they could become something, when she knew wholeheartedly they could not. Plus, she had bigger things to worry about, like the fact that she wouldn't be able to move out of her parents' house anytime soon if she didn't learn how to make money. Devin had had plenty of jobs. She was, after all, 26. Her problem was holding on to the money. The moment she had it, it seemed to slip right through her fingers as she spent it on things that brought her joy. So many things had brought her joy that she eventually lost count of what was really important to her. At present, she had a whopping $575 in her bank account. Had she predicted she was going to be let go from yet another dead-end internship, she would have saved the meager income she had. Who was she kidding? If she had known she was getting let go, she would have gone out and spent the entirety of her paycheck on a night out with her friends. She could picture it now. A place downtown, a round of shots. At some point in the night, she would end up on the table. By the end of the night, she would end up in someone's bed. It was a tale as old as time, and Devin felt at home in the merry-go-round of chaos she deliberately created all those years ago. Oh my God. Chris Balair. An overly friendly girl Devin vaguely knew as Kira waved aggressively at Devin to grab her attention. It must have been the jet lag, but Devin swore she saw Christian roll his eyes. Hi, I'm Devin. She gave Kira a half-hearted wave and sized up the larger group. Everyone was objectively attractive, making Devin suddenly feel woefully underdressed. She had chosen jeans, knee-high boots, a white t-shirt, and her go-to cargo jacket for the mandatory school outing to Buckingham Palace. Only one day in London, and she was already uncomfortable. Did you have a good flight over here? I arrived a week ago. I wanted to get a head start, the lay of the land. It took Devin a minute to register that Kira was talking to her. Oh, yeah, that's cool. I just got here this morning, so sorry I'm a bit out of it. Devin fought the waves of nausea coursing through her body. She had forgotten her motion sickness pills of all things on the plane ride over, and now she was paying for it, with the constant feeling of motion pulsating through her like a torturous ride she couldn't get off. It's all good. I'm glad you're finally here. Kira gestured to the group of strangers. I've been dying to meet my fellow Fordham Rams. This time Devin wasn't hallucinating. She really did see Christian roll his eyes. What was his problem? Devin thought about pepping up her energy to match Kira's, but she couldn't muster it. Thankfully, Beth stepped in to fill the void. It's so great to be here across the pond. Should we start walking? Beth gestured down the long drive towards the palace, and Devin finally noted the hordes of tourists walking past their small group. She was in London. She took a deep breath and willed herself to be present. She fell in step behind Kira and Beth, but just ahead of Christian and Joe. They were in deep conversation about a game they were missing because of the time change with the States. Devin floated in between the two groups and thought about engaging with them. They were all students at the same school, after all. They had to have something in common, but in her 3 years there, she had never spent a copious amount of time with any of them. How odd. Hey, Devin. She turned around as she heard her name, called, and briefly made eye contact with Christian. He had soft brown eyes that crinkled in the corners. They were friendly, approachable even. She whipped her attention away from him quickly. She was in London. How cliche to meet someone she literally went to school with on a regular basis and start dating him. She imperceptibly shook her head. She was getting ahead of herself. She shifted her attention back to look at Christian and then at Joe, who was talking to her about their mutual class. So I looked up the roster and you and me have English Lit together. That's great. It's on Monday at 6, right? Yep, we can meet up earlier if you want to grab a pint before heading over. Joe said it so nonchalantly as if she always drank a pint before going to school. She supposed this could be typical if you were going to class at prime dinner time. That would be great. You said your name was Joe, right? He nodded vigorously to confirm. He was cute. Definitely more outgoing than Christian, who had yet to say a word to her outside of calling her name. Side by side, the boys made an unlikely pair. Joe was broad, somewhat stocky, but his piercing blue eyes and his high confidence made him magnetic. Christian, by comparison, was tall, slightly too tall for her, if she was being honest. She figured he had to be at least 6'4". He had long legs and he kind of ambled as he walked. He did seem to have a gentle demeanor, though, and Devon took it as a good sign that he was probably harmless. She had known her fair share of hard to catch men. London was supposed to be a time for breaking that habit. She looked at him further, hoping he didn't notice her staring. He wore a white cotton t-shirt with 2 buttons open at his neck and a windbreaker on the top. His dirty blonde hair stood up askew as if he had just run his hands through it. Maybe that was something he did when he was nervous. She caught herself. Why did she care what he did when he was nervous? They arrived at the entrance to the palace, and Kira organized them for a multitude of group photos. These people were strangers. It felt so awkward to stand here and take photos with people she didn't know. For all she knew, they could be serial killers. Okay, maybe that was taking it a step too far, but still. There was something to be said for being aware when she was in a new country and with people that she didn't know that well. Perhaps she should just try to relax. That's what her mom had told her before she flew out of JFK. Just try and relax. It'll be wonderful. She let her mom brush her hair out of her face as they stood at the entrance to security. Be well, my baby. Her mom pulled her in tight for a hug, and Devon kept one hand on her suitcase handle. She was afraid that if she let go and hugged her mom with both arms, she wouldn't get on the plane. Just relax, she whispered under her breath as she waited for Kira to find another tourist to take their group photo. She hadn't enjoyed the previous choice of photographer, apparently. What did you say? Devon looked up to meet Christian's eyes. Had he been this close to her the whole time? She could have sworn he was on the other side of the pack for the last photo. Nothing, sorry, just talking to myself. Oh God, she groaned inwardly. Could she be any weirder? Cool. I'm Christian, by the way. It's nice to meet you. He extended his hand, and Devon was taken aback by his formality. When was the last time she had shook a guy's hand? Hesitantly, she extended her hand to meet his, and she tried to ignore how soft and warm it felt. She suddenly had the most deep sensation of wanting to bury her face in his chest. She could feel what it would be like to breathe into him, sturdy, strong. She quickly pulled her hand away and met his eyes once more. They smiled back at her with a warmth so full she suddenly felt seen. It had been so long since that had happened, she fought back the urge to cry. Snapped back to reality. Devon shook her head back to the present. She looked around her room. My God, how had it gotten into such disarray? She could blame Christian. Isn't that what she always did? Blame someone else for her circumstances. She could easily shake her fist up at the sky and curse his name under her breath as she began the daunting task of sitting down and checking her bank account. But what good would it do? She didn't even know where he was anymore. Last she checked, it was Argentina. Before that, it had been the desert in Sedona. One time, it had been Japan. The less she knew about him, the better. It was a specific type of pain when she opened Instagram and saw him jaunting across the globe. She sighed and looked around once again. What would Christian think of her now? The plants she purchased with so much hope sat on her windowsill, dying a slow, painful death. Her college diploma was shoved somewhere under her bed along with a photo album she painstakingly made each year. Hey, Devon, Dad and I are going out. Do you want to come? Her mom, Joan, peeked her head into the room. What in the world? Joan looked around and sighed. Devon, if you're going to continue living with us, can you at least pick up your clothes off the floor? I was looking for something. Devon dropped another article of clothing onto the floor in front of her. What could you possibly be looking for? You had to go through every piece of clothing you owned to find it? Devon bit her tongue. The short answer was yes. But she couldn't bring herself to explain that to Joan. It wasn't the right time. Don't worry about it. I'll clean this up. Sorry, Mom. Devon tried to avoid her mother's eyes. They had a way of boring into her soul that made her feel loved and judged at the same time. She supposed that's the way that most kids felt towards their moms. For them to be capable of unconditional love, it was probably highly likely that they kept some judgment in their back pocket just to keep things interesting. Honey, Devon dragged her eyes up from the floor to make eye contact. As predicted, Joan's eyes conveyed intense worry, which Devon had been seeing far too often for her liking. But today, they conveyed something new. Devon, Oh no. Abort. Devon should have known better. Her mother's eyes not only conveyed worry, but they had an agenda. Damn it. She glanced behind Joan's head. The door was too far away for her to have a logical escape. She would have to sit here and take this one. I just wanted to ask, how is the job hunt going? I know you said that you've been submitting resumes, and I'm sure you're waiting to hear back from places. But maybe it's time to ask for some help. You know, your dad and I would be really happy to speak to a few people on your behalf. I'm sure you could always call up Rosie and see if she has anything available. There's no shame in going back. Devon could feel her mom's eagerness. The way she was trying to connect with her made her head hurt. It wasn't Joan's fault her daughter was a fuck-up. Her parents had done everything right. They paid for college in full. They helped her get her first job with Rosie at the theater. They came to all of her shows and told all of their friends about her mediocre success. It wasn't their fault that Devin couldn't make something of herself. It was entirely her own. She took a deep breath and tried not to sound combative. Her defenses were so high recently that she forgot what it felt like to be easygoing. Mom, I know, I'm trying. I can't call Rosie. I really want to make a name for myself, and yes, the process is slow. It was excruciatingly slow, mainly because every resume Devin had sent out was promptly rejected. She was wholly unqualified to do anything but work in theater. It was a place she loved but had grown to resent. Any feelings of positivity she once carried had been replaced with the bitter, burning sensation of shame rising up in her throat. No, she wouldn't go back. She couldn't. I know you want me to succeed and I'm trying to save money. I really am. I'm sorry I'm back here with you. I didn't think it would go like this. It being her entire life imploding in the course of a year. 12 whole months of chaos culminating in one fell swoop of utter rejection on all fronts. She was burned and burnt out. She couldn't bring herself to care about anything other than licking her wounds at the moment, and what better place to do it than at home? As long as you're trying. We're proud of you. You know we're always here for you, right? You always have a room here. I don't want you to feel bad about being with us. I know it doesn't feel great to be back with your parents, but we love having you here. I just wish you were happier. She gave Devin a hug, one of those tight squeezes the air right out of you hugs. I love you more than you could possibly know, she whispered into her ear. Devin squeezed her fists into a tight ball and reached her arms around her mom in return, not releasing the tension. If she did, she would crumble. She wouldn't be able to piece herself back together. She hugged her mom and squeezed her hands tighter and mustered up all the courage she had to say, I love you too. She ignored the pain she felt when she let her mom go. She purposefully ignored the feeling that she had hurt her mom by waiting 30 seconds too long to say, I love you back. She ignored the fact that happiness had been an elusive emotion for the last 12 months. At this point, she was unfeeling to almost everything, and that scared her so much more than any feeling she had ever felt before. Class Pass, September 2018. Joe! Devin waved from her seat at the picnic table to get his attention. She shielded her eyes from the uncharacteristically bright sun with one hand as she waved with the other. Joe looked around, having heard his name, and his face lit up in a bright smile as he caught Devin's eye. As he wove his way through the table, she couldn't help but notice the way he moved. It was as though people moved aside for him. Sure, she may have been a touch dramatic in that description, but in fairness, many people had moved to the side as he navigated his way towards her. It was as though his stature alone made people take notice. Add a charismatic smile, and suddenly every woman in the pub had her eyes on him. Devin suddenly felt very aware of how attractive he was and how little effort she had put into her own appearance that day. It was the first day of classes, and she had opted for jeans with a white tank. How very unoriginal. She had thrown an old cardigan in her book bag in case the classroom was cold. She could not have tried less. What are we celebrating today on day one? He looked expectantly at her as she pulled herself out of her own thoughts. A pint of whatever you're having. She really didn't know how to order. She wasn't legal in the States, so ordering at a bar seemed daunting and unfamiliar. Oh, come on, Dev, let's live it up. Time for some Pim's cups. 2 rounds later, Devin was feeling great as she waltzed into her first class. She scanned the room. It was an old habit from Fordham. The days of classes, she would try to see if she knew anybody. She relished in the ability to sit next to someone she was at least mildly familiar with in order to calm her nerves. But today she didn't recognize anyone. She shook her head. Of course she wouldn't recognize anyone. She was in London, after all. She had followed Joe's lead down to the middle of the lecture hall. The class was empty by her typical standards. Only 20 or so students talked in murmured tones as they began to find places to sit. Joe plunked himself down unceremoniously in the middle of the room and tossed his backpack onto the chair next to him. Devin moved to his other side. She supposed he just wanted more space. She took her seat and began unpacking her book bag. She laid her cardigan across her lap and pulled out her laptop. She dug around for a pen and a notebook, just in case. You sure you got everything there? Joe teased. He hadn't pulled anything out of his bag. He sat there empty-handed, and Devin couldn't understand why. Ha, yes. But what about you? No notebook or something? For what? It's the first day of school. Who does work on the first day of class? She supposed he was right. She was an over-preparer. That's how you succeeded. If she anticipated all of her needs ahead of time, she wouldn't be caught off guard. She hated being caught off guard. She dug around in her bag a bit more to look for a hair tie when she heard Joe's voice. There he is. Welcome to the party, man. She looked up. Her heart rate rose and fell when she realized it wasn't Christian. Why had she thought it would be him? Devin, this is Andy. He's from USC. Met him at a mixer over the weekend. Devin tried to hide her confusion. People went to parties over the weekend. She had spent the better part of Saturday night battling her way through Tesco. Sunday, she did absolutely nothing but watch UK Netflix in bed. "What's up, Devin? Nice to meet you." She smiled and said her hellos. She really needed to try to socialize more. After the lecture, she tried to wave her goodbyes, but Joe wasn't having it. "Devin, it's a Monday night at 7:30, and we just finished our one obligation of the day. Do you have something better to do than come to dinner with us?" He gestured to Andy, who nodded encouragingly. "Well, when you put it that way, I guess not." She tried not to feel like a loser. She had just assumed people went home after class. It was a Monday. But she was abroad. This is what she was supposed to do. As they walked into the pub a few minutes later, she was surprised. At the table in the back sat Beth, Kira, and Christian, along with a handful of people she vaguely recognized from their too brief orientation a week ago. "Hey!" Kira waved at the three of them enthusiastically. "Welcome, welcome. How was the class?" Devin got the vibe that Kira was used to leading the pack, and she didn't mind. She appreciated the fact that Kira was showing genuine interest in everyone's well-being. It was something she wished she could do herself. It was good. Devin wanted to ask the teacher for homework. Joe gave her a playful shove. She heard the slightest chuckle come from Christian's side of the table. "Aw, Devin, I did the same thing. I don't know how the classes work here yet." Kira piped up. "We'll figure something out tomorrow in history. I think you're in my section. Anyway, take a seat. We've been holding down the fort for a while." Devin clocked the multiple empties on the table. How long had they been hanging out for? Devin shuffled to the side to let Joe and Andy take seats. They seemed perfectly at ease in the pub. She moved to her left and found herself next to Beth. Christian gave her a brief glance across the table. He didn't seem mean. She supposed he was just shy and quiet, but that couldn't be right. He was fully engaged with Andy and Joe. Maybe it was just a her thing. Long after they had finished dinner and 2 more rounds, Kira called everyone to attention. "So, I think we need to talk about our trips. How does everyone feel about a weekend in Paris?" She looked around the table at the heads bobbing up and down in pleasant alcohol-fueled agreement. "I was thinking 2 weekends from now, so last week of September. Does that work for everybody?" The group nodded, and other cities got thrown into the plan for the future. Prague, Lisbon, Rome, maybe even a trip to Sweden over reading week. All doable if they planned it right. "Great. So, it's settled. In Paris in 2 weeks. I'll send everyone the schedules when I finalize the itinerary, and we should be all set. Who's excited?" Kira's enthusiasm fell on less enthusiastic ears as the group started to fade from one too many rounds. "It'll be fun. Thanks for planning it, Kira." Devin twisted her head away from Kira to look at Christian. It was the first time she'd heard his voice clearly the entire night. It had this quality of being soft but firm. It reminded her of the feeling of waking up on a Saturday morning in a winter bed and snuggling up in a flannel. After paying the check, Devin began to gather her things. She was exhausted. "I'll see you guys later. Kira, text me if you want to meet up tomorrow before class." "Will do." Kira gave a wave from her end of the table. She was flirting with Joe, and Devin couldn't blame her. Who wouldn't flirt with someone like him? "Hey, Devin, wait up. I'll walk you back." Christian stood up, gathering his backpack off the floor. God, he was tall. She wasn't wearing booties today, so she felt particularly short by comparison. She had to tilt her head all the way up to look him in the eye. He followed her towards the door, and she couldn't help but notice how calm she felt next to him. It was as though he moved in a state of constant balance. That was far from Devin's resting state of static chaos. "So, how's it going?" Christian fell into easy step as they walked back towards the dorms. It's good, I guess. I'm still kind of figuring things out." She fiddled with her keys. It was dark out, and she had little to no idea where she was. For all she knew, Christian could be a murderer. "I think that you and I were in the same philosophy class back in freshman year. Did you have Professor McDonough?" No, I had Professor Santiago." That came out harsher than she intended. Something about Christian was unnerving. Of course he was cute. She loved the way his blonde hair was askew. It gave him that boyish charm she had read about in all of her teen romance novels growing up. It also helped that he had a soft laugh that seemed to always be right on top of his mind, as if he was ready to always giggle. There was a lightness to him that was completely contrary to Devin's own demeanor. She was a worrier. She predicted things that it would always go wrong. She assumed there would be things that went well, but those would be less than the things she knew would go awry. To her, life was enjoyable, but the other shoe could drop at any minute. To interact with someone like Christian, who seemed buoyant and disarming and somehow intriguing at the same time, was annoying. "Oh, sorry. I thought I'd seen you around. I guess I was wrong. Did you have any friends that lived in Lowshirt? I was on the 3rd floor." Devin racked her brain. He was trying, so she should try too. I think my friend Katie lived there. She was the ultimate Frisbee team, if that helps." "Actually, yeah, it does. She's dating my roommate, Drew. She's great." Oh my god, Drew's your roommate? How funny. I can't believe we haven't run into each other. I lived in Martyrs floor that year, second on the second floor. She put the wide smile back behind her lips. She didn't want to seem overeager. It had gotten her into trouble in the past. She didn't even know if Christian was single. She needed to find out first before she got herself into a situation of flirting with a taken guy. It had happened one too many times for anyone to believe it was an honest mistake anymore. Yeah, Drew and I have been roommates since freshman year. I know a few people in Martyrs, but no one on your floor. But I'm sure we would have crossed paths at some point. It's a small school after all. Devin nodded in agreement. For its large student population, Fordham was surprisingly small. One day you could think you knew no one, followed by knowing everyone in the quad the next day. Well, this is me. Christian pointed to the dorm next to her own. The dorms were set up that the 7 individuals lived in singles but shared a kitchen. She had yet to properly meet her flatmates. She had spent so much time in her room it hadn't occurred to her that there were other people living on the other sides of her door. Thanks for walking me home. I'll see you around. Yep, see you. Christian gave a noncommittal wave as he entered his building. What an interesting man. Interview confusion. Devin had sweat through her dress. She had known this would happen. In fact, it happened every time she wore it. It was the dress's fault. Its fake synthetic silk material trapped all the heat inside her body, and suddenly she had pit stains. She whipped her trusty cardigan out of her purse and prayed that by the time the interview was over, she wouldn't have sweat through that as well. She looked across the table at the interviewer. It was her second time in the office. She'd made it past the initial screening and was now meeting with her potential boss. The role wasn't what she wanted, but she didn't have any other option. She didn't even know what she wanted anymore, so who was she to be this picky? I see you did 5 years at the public theater. What led to the switch to corporate? It was a fair question. Devin had spent the better part of her 5 years building a solid reputation as a want-to-be Broadway producer. The public theater was a great place to kick off said career. She'd gotten to work with off-Broadway shows that would eventually make their ways to their larger houses if they had the right team behind them. She had always wanted to be on the right team. It was the only way to keep moving up in the ranks. The theater community was so small that one wrong step and her reputation could be ruined. She thought of Rosie, their friendship blowing up in a glorious fashion that could only occur in the most dramatic of industries. It involved pyrotechnics, a screaming match, and of course, crying into her champagne. But that was long in the past. Things could get better. They just had to. To be honest, I got burnt out. The long hours at the theater until 10 or 11 at night were sustainable for the first few years, but by the end of it, I wanted more balance. This wasn't a lie. She really did get burned. The pyrotechnics had left the faintest scar on her leg when a piece of ash flew out and adhered itself to her shin. She dumbly ripped it off, taking the skin right off with it. Out of habit, she reached down and ran a hand over the spot. It was smoother now and didn't quite sting anymore, but she could still feel the phantom pain of the sharp, brief burn. I see you left them a year ago. What have you been doing in the interim? The interviewer wasn't kind. Devin ignored it. She didn't care if she was kind at this point. All she wanted to know was if this woman could in fact provide her with a paycheck that would be enough for her to leave her parents' apartment, or alternatively afford the premium plan on Hinge so she could bag a rich husband. If she got the job, she would start a hedge fund husband hunting immediately. Well, I actually wrote a few screenplays. I also worked in television because I was thinking of moving to LA. Why are those not listed on your resume? She scanned the sheet of paper once again. Devin hesitated. In truth, it was because she had gotten fired from the set for failing to show up on time. Once was a free pass. 10 days in a row was inexcusable. I didn't want to mix medias. I understand that this role is for Broadway to commercial television crossover research, creating focus groups to discuss the potential of moving large-scale productions into a more user-friendly arenas like the TV special, or even potentially a multi-season show. She was impressed by the way the words flowed right out of her mouth. When she explained the role that way, it felt useful, as though she could actually make something of it. In actuality, the job description had been for a research coordinator, aka the poor soul that sits in the office all day scrolling through pitches to television studios looking for typos before sending it to the higher-ups who actually did the meetings. She could tell the interviewer didn't like her. She didn't blame her. She didn't like herself either. It was clear as day that Devin had no idea what she was doing. The only confusing part was why she was even still in this conversation to begin with. Typically, she made it about 2 questions in. She would get to the part of why they asked why she left the public theater, and something in their faces would change. It's as though they could vaguely recall the New York Post article where she landed on page 6, her face partially obscured by the hand she was running through her hair from exasperation. She would wait patiently as they would change their tone and cough uncomfortably, the realization of who they were speaking to dawning on their faces. She would get one more question. It would be light and breezy like she had studied in school 5 years before. They would politely say something that they had come up with, and she would leave the conference room, never hearing from them again. The first few times it happened, she would send the customary thank you email with the classic, "I look forward to hearing from you." Her exclamation point would sit there mocking her as day after day as she never heard back. Eventually, she got the message. No one wanted to hire the girl who had made a mess of things in such a spectacular fashion. "I'm going to tell you what, Devin. You're not the right fit for me." Devin's shoulders visibly slumped as she tried to take a breath. She hadn't ever been told this out loud. She wasn't sure if she could take the brutal truth. "But I know who you would be perfect for. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to step out for a moment and call my colleague, and if they give me the okay, I'm going to hire you today. Does that sound all right?" Devin sat back astounded. She wasn't sure how hiring in the corporate world worked, but surely it couldn't be this simple. Yes? That would be great." The interviewer stepped outside, and Devin watched as she spoke in hushed tones, glancing frequently back through the conference room window. Devin averted her eyes and looked anywhere but at the door. She wasn't sure what this woman's deal was. She didn't even catch her name. This is what she got for going on Indeed and applying to a somewhat sketchy listing. She should know better than to interview at a random office on West 38th Street with only 4 people in it. The name of the company was Bibbs, for Pete's sake. What did that even mean? The door at the conference room opened, and she watched as the interviewer sat back down with a relaxed smile on her face. "Good news, Devin. You have a job." She waited as Devin looked back at her blankly. "That's great. Is it okay if I ask what it is?" "Oh, of course. You're going to be a walker. That's it. If you'd like to, of course." Devin nearly stood up and walked out of the room. She had come in here for a mediocre focus group job. How had she ended up as a dog walker? "Sorry, I'm confused. A dog walker for who? I don't understand. Who's your colleague?" The interviewer was undeterred. In fact, she almost looked amused. "Devin, can I ask you something? When you applied for this job, did you research the company?" Devin shifted in her seat. Of course she hadn't. She had just read the $40 an hour and went for it. "I didn't. I mean, I kind of did. I just didn't do, extensive research." "Well, if you had, you would know that Bibbs is a subsidiary of CDI. Bibbs is a research group focused solely on figuring out what will or will not do well on Broadway. CDI is the largest shareholder of theaters in New York City. They happen to own a piece of every theater with the exception of 3. That's 38 theaters in total. Quite the portfolio, in my opinion." Devin stared wide-eyed back at her. This was a dicey situation. She couldn't be seen applying for a job in a theater again. Rosie would kill her. She would show up at her house and yell right at her. At a certain point, Devin would probably have to duck from the flying objects that would be hurled at her head. Within those 38 theaters, there's typically a production manager. They're responsible for overseeing the execution of the show and working with the owners, directors, stage crew, etc., etc. You get my point. You will be a walker to all of them. A walker, not a dog walker. Now she was even more confused. What is a walker? I've never heard about that job before. You've never heard about it because I just created it. Devin was wide-eyed. Who is this woman and how did she have all of this authority? Devin, you walked into this interview, said hello, and sat down at the table. I said hello, but you barely raised your eyes up to meet mine. I didn't bother telling you my name because, in all honesty, it didn't seem like you wanted to be here. But you have an impressive resume, despite the fact that it's filled with intern work. And I know your work from the public. I also read the article in the Post, but I'm going to take a chance on you because, frankly, you look like you need someone to give you a break, so this is it. Devin looked up from the table. She felt the waves of embarrassment course through her as she listened to this woman's assessment of her. It wasn't wrong at all. I'm so sorry. I really am. It's just been a really shitty year, and I know I should have done my research. I should have come prepared and not tried to get a paycheck from you. I don't deserve this job that you're offering, though. It's a very kind offer. I wouldn't hire me at all. She began to gather her things. Devin, sit down. Devin hovered in a half-standing, half-seated position. Please sit. Really, let me explain. Reluctantly, Devin sat back down. She braced herself for a further reprimand. She could only imagine what vitriol she would receive the longer she stayed. My name is Christine, and my husband is Dave. We're the Ingrams. You see, CDI, Christine and Dave Ingram. The recognition of the name began to dawn on Devin. Shit. The Ingrams were theater royalty. How could she be this stupid? Christine continued. When I stepped out earlier, I called Dave. He's in desperate need of someone on the ground to essentially walk back and forth between our theaters to do status updates on the day-to-day, hence the job title, Walker. You don't strike me as someone who likes to be stuck in an office, sitting at a desk, scrolling through research findings. A bit of movement and fresh air might do you some good. The role is hour-intensive, and you're expected to be at the theater from 8 a.m. to showtime every night. If you'd like to stay for the show, that's fine by us, but just know you won't be paid for those hours. You'll receive benefits such as healthcare, and the pay is $30 an hour. I recognize this is $10 less than the role you applied for, but given the nature of the work, I'll take it. Devin jumped in immediately. She didn't want Christine, her pseudo-fairy godmother, to take the offer off the table. Christine laughed. You don't even know what the job is. I don't care. I'll take it. I'll do whatever you need me to do. Devin, I'm taking a chance on you. The only thing I ask you to do in return is pay it forward. You're not indebted to me and you don't owe me anything. If you don't like the job, my only request is that you give myself or Dave 2 days notice. Like I said before, this is an interesting role and it's one we're all trying to figure out what to make of. I picture it as a mutual test run for everyone involved. I'm in. Christine, thank you so much. When do I start? Dave will meet you outside the Gershwin next week. Dress code is casual, but I might suggest sneakers. You'll be doing a lot of walking. With that, she winked and reached across the table to shake Devin's hand. After profusely thanking Christine over and over again, Devin took the elevator back down to the ground floor and exited onto 38th Street. She looked left and right in complete disbelief. She had gotten a job and in the theater, no less. Granted, she had absolutely no idea what she was doing, but no matter. Come 10 a.m. on Monday, she'd be a working woman again. Why are you everywhere? Oof. Devin had just walked smack dab into someone on the street. The lid to her iced coffee balancing precariously in her left hand as she death gripped her purse with her right. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Wait, she knew that voice. It was overly polite with the slightest hint of a southern drawl. She looked up. Kira? Kira looked back at her in mutual disbelief. Devin, what are you doing here? Oh my God, what a small world. Can you believe we found each other in the city? You know, I always tell people New York City is big and small at the same time, but now it's true. Kira paused for air. Devin had forgotten her habit of over-enthusiastic run-on sentences. She always sounded hyped and exhausted at the same time. Well, I just got a new job. Devin kept up her part about having no idea what said job actually was to herself. The less Kira knew, the better. Congratulations, we need to go out for drinks. What are you doing in an hour? I need to go pick up my stuff at the office, but are you around for dinner or maybe apps? Are you okay going somewhere in Union Square? Devin ignored the fact that Kira seemed not to care if she had said yes or no. Despite the fact that she was nearing negative money in her bank account, she reluctantly accepted. What else did she have to do? She had just gotten a job, albeit a random one, but there was a paycheck in her future. Surely that was worth celebrating. Yeah, of course, that sounds great. I'll see you in a bit. Devin watched as Kira rushed south down 7th Avenue. She did an about face on 38th Street and headed east. If she had over an hour to kill, she could at least window shop on Broadway. An hour later, Devin found herself at Gramercy Tavern. When Kira had suggested Union Square, Devin assumed it would be one of the local dive bars they had frequented in their early post-college years. She had not anticipated ordering a $25 martini and chugging half of it to get over the price shock, but alas, here she was. Seated at the bar, she swiveled her head over her shoulder, keeping an eye on the door. Kira had texted she'd be a few minutes late. But on her way, crazy day at the office. Devin took a calculated sip of her martini. She had to make it last the entirety of the night. She couldn't jump the gun. She looked out the window and saw a lock of blonde hair pass by. Over the years, she'd gotten used to paying attention to blondes. She knew the sensation of feeling the rush of curiosity, followed by fear, followed by disappointment when it wouldn't be him. But the hope, always the hope, that it would in fact one day be him is what kept her looking out the window day after day. She thought it would abate when she got into a new relationship, but through Charlie, then Adam, then Xander, she learned that she would still look over their shoulders just in case it was him. She let the thought that it could be him flit through her mind on this particular day. It wasn't a luxury she typically afforded herself. It only led to a spiral of self-loathing. How she had broken his heart, tried to recover, eagerly gave too much of herself and suffered the consequences, the constant what if that kept her up some nights. No, she couldn't let the vodka lead her down this road. But yet, there she was, opening up her phone. She didn't even need to search for the photo. She knew the day it was taken and robotically scrolled to the exact moment in time where she felt like herself and he felt like him, and they were just two people about to have something happen. The photo that popped up on her screen as she heard, "Hey, look who I found!" She slammed her phone face down as everything came into focus. Kira leaned in to give her a hug, a familiar torso at her eye level, his scent of downy like a rush to her senses, the low, soft-spoken voice. "Hey, Devin." She didn't need to meet his eyes to know he found this amusing. You sleep with someone long enough and you know when they find you funny and when they don't. In this particular moment, to Joe, she must have been a goddamn comedy act. Surely he had seen her phone. He had to have seen her going down memory lane. It was only a matter of time before it came up, before she brought it up, her nerves getting the better of her. "Hey, Joe." She let him lean down and give her a kiss on the cheek. She felt the way his lips lingered slightly too long near her ear. He had been one mistake and still was one, but fuck it. If he was a mistake she had already made once, what was the harm a second time? 2 rounds later, and Kira was smashed. Devin patted herself on the back, having switched to a cranberry club after her martini. She didn't want her nerves to get the better of her. Guys, can you believe it? Look at us. What's it been, 10 years? Joe exchanged eye contact with Devin across the table. They knew this routine. Kira would move on from sappy to blubbering in a matter of minutes. I mean, this is wild. I run into Devin on the street and you got a new job. Oh, no, we didn't celebrate it. Joe, didn't I tell you Devin got a new job today? And then I run into you? You, of all people, walking out of the subway, and where were you going? I didn't even ask. Kira was talking to herself more than anyone at this point, but Devin appreciated Joe's good-humored response. I was actually going on a date. Devin's jaw dropped. He had skipped a date for her. She tried it herself. It wasn't for her. It was for Kira. It was always for Kira. A date? Oh no, Joe, that poor girl. Kira was slowly moving into meltdown mode, and Devin stepped in to save the night. Don't worry, Kira. He texted her and he let her know that he was meeting old friends. He's good like that. Kira perked up like a sunflower, her own guilt assuaged by Devin's lie. What would it matter in the long run? It's not like Devin was planning on seeing Kira or Joe again anytime soon. Yeah, don't worry about it, Kira. She understood. Devin briefly mused who she was. Was it a first date? A third? Did they meet on the apps, or perhaps he was in a relationship? If that was the case, why would he be here with them? So, this job, tell us about it. Joe leaned his elbows onto the table and tilted forward. She knew this move. It was the move that pushed her to lean into him as well, if there was a magnetic force pulling her towards him. She flicked her eyes to his lips. She knew what they could do, but she needed to focus. This was not the time. Well, it's a promotion of sorts. She lied again. Who would know? She suspected the last thing Joe or Kira did was follow Broadway news in page 6. They both worked in finance, and if Devin was right, Kira was still loyal to the Bravo housewives as her guilty pleasure. That's cool. What were you doing before? Joe's eyebrows hiked up. It would be imperceptible to anyone else, but to Devin, it felt like a challenge. I worked as a production assistant. Then I took some time off to take courses to move fully into the management side of theater. If either of them bothered to check her LinkedIn, that would help explain the year gap where she had gone dormant. She continued spinning the story. She had done it so many times by now that it was effortless. Anyway, now I'm going to be managing a few theaters for CDI. They own a bunch and needed someone to organize everything for them. There. That sounded legitimate. That sounds great, Devin. Where are you living these days? Damn Kira in her memory like a hawk. The last time she had run into Kira and had gotten drinks, she was living with 3 girls in Stuytown. One by one, they got into serious relationships, and just as Devin was planning to move into her own place, her life imploded. She couldn't tell Kira and Joe about her parents. It would be too embarrassing. My lease is actually coming up in 2 weeks. I haven't found a new place to live yet, actually, so if you know anyone, please keep me in mind. I can't say that I do. Robbie and I have been together for so long I only know couples now. Devin resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Kira never let her forget that she had been with her boyfriend Robbie for 6 years. They moved in together right after college. It occurred to Devin why she stopped hanging out with Kira. She always felt like her poor, pitiful, single friend. Joe interrupted her spiral. I actually know someone. Remember Christian Parker? Of course she did. She remembered the way his hands felt in hers, the way she had pummeled his heart into 1,000 pieces during their year abroad. She specifically remembered the many disagreements they had about will we, won't we for the good 2 years after school. To her, Christian Parker would always be the one that didn't quite fit. She had made her peace with that long ago. Why revisit the past? Chris's roommate, Andy. Remember from CA? He moved out and he's looking for a roommate. It's a 2-bed in Park Slope, which is wild considering the rent right now, but it's rent stabilized and he's trying to fill the spot before he leaves for Prague in a few weeks. I'll text you his info. Devin bit her tongue. She didn't want to indicate that she still had his info. In fact, she often kept tabs on Christian because he often kept tabs on her. She didn't want to clue Joe in to the extent of their not friendship relationship because what good would that do? The less everyone knew about her life, the better. Oh, didn't you used to have a thing with him? Kira mumbled as she downed the last of her sidecar. Yes, no, not really. Yes, you did. As I recall, it was quite the thing. Devin couldn't raise her eyes to meet Joe's. She couldn't handle the look of curiosity and disappointment she was sure to receive. Instead, she bore her eyes directly into Kira's and lied once again. It really wasn't anything. After a few months, it turned into nothing at all.